Hello, everyone. Welcome to Canucks This Week. I'm Paul Chapman, joined by Patrick Johnston. Patrick, we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about Quinn
Always.
Hughes, Elias Pettersson, the plight of the Canucks, losing streaks, star power. What does the future hold, tanking, and more today. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. Go to www, if we still have to say that,
What year are you
theprovince.com.
in?
I know the province that we were just talking about, throwbacks to the late 90s. Theprovince.com, vancouversun.com, sign up for Canuck Report. You get all our content delivered to you, including these videos every day. So, Patrick, I wanted to start with a little goofy nugget here. Our dear departed friend, Jason Botchford, one of his many famous sort of rants towards me and others on our time doing sports radio at 1040
Yeah.
was about and I know this has been covered everywhere from Curb Your Enthusiasm on down, the statute of limitations on Happy New Year. We are now at January 14th. This is our first video of the new year. And I sort of thought we should be allowed to wish people a Happy New Year until the Canucks actually win a game this year.
That's good. That's Paul. You know what that's called? That's called taking and elaborating and extending. That's well
Yes.
done. I think.
Yes.
I think. I. It's tough. You don't want to speak for Botch, but Botch might have even given you that one.
Yeah. Well, begrudgingly, he gave me anything he ever gave me. He gave me begrudgingly, but it's an interesting topic because, I mean, is it really a Happy New Year until the Canucks actually win a game when we're speaking to Canuck fans? But when I look at it, their last win was a shootout win on December 29th. Their last win in regulation was against the New York Islanders on December 19th.
Yeah.
Let's just start off the top. This losing streak, and up until last night, where really Lankinen kept the game close against Ottawa, they'd given up at least 5 goals in every game. Like, it's beyond atrocious. What happened? What happened to the team that won 4 after they traded Quinn Hughes?
Well, it's funny. I was talking to a colleague, Bruce Garriock, this morning. He covered the game last night in Ottawa, and he said, "Wow, your team's not very good." And I'm like,
Not my team.
Yeah, not my exactly. But well, first of all, no Quinn Hughes, right? Like, that changes the dynamic of this team incredibly so. Second, I mean, to a degree, it's about the centers. I mean, Jim Rutherford and I spoke this morning, and column going up in a little bit, or people will see the column by the time they see the video. But he makes a fair point, which is they're missing Rossi and they're missing Hedel. I mean, listen, they have 2 pretty good centers that are not in the lineup, guys who can actually score goals, and the replacements have been David Kampf and I mean, and like Max Sasson has been a great story, but Ratu, like, the centers that have been filling in the gap have not been able to score. So that's a huge factor. They're not scoring goals. And then defensively, they're a mess, right? Like, I mean, some of this I do think comes back to Adam Foote's decision to go away from a system that was very disciplined, very intense under Rick Tocchet, to a much looser, much more, I think in many ways, old school style. The idea of sort of man to man, read what's in front of you. It requires you to make good decisions all the time, and the Canucks have not been making good decisions, and so that also comes back to the players they have, which Rutherford also acknowledged. They have 3 essentially first-year defensemen, if you want to call them, not necessarily rookies, but first-year defensemen, and guys who are works in progress, really, realistically. I mean, Tom Willander had a really rough night in Montreal. Steve Bouillon, gets scratched in Montreal, and I think we've seen a struggle defensively. Elias Pettersson's now back in the minors. The defenseman, not the forward. You said Elias Pettersson off top, but I know you meant Elias Pettersson, the forward. But anyway, Elias Pettersson, defenseman, back in the minors. It's a team that's in flux. That its focus is not now, and as Rutherford said, we have to keep our eyes on the future and not make shortcuts and not go to try. Well, I got to fix them, make a trade that will fix the team right now. I want to build the team for the future. So that's kind of where we're at. It's tough. I mean, this is what a rebuild looks like. Like, that's the thing we have to remind ourselves. That the purpose is they want to get a top draft pick, and they're going to do what, in the end, that's where they'd like to end up. And the more they lose, the better the chances are they end up in that position. So here we are.
Let's just run through some of the numbers, as ugly as they are. So they are last in the NHL in points. They've got the NHL's longest losing streak in 5. They are, thanks to a couple of shootout losses, they are 1-7-2 in their last 10. The only mark that's worse is the Anaheim Ducks in their last 10, 1-8-1. Goals for, they're not, even though it's been terrible lately, when you look at some of the, Jake DeBrusk, Brock Besser, guys who you would count on, veterans. We're not talking about young players struggling here. We're talking about guys who you need goals from. You can't have them in, let alone double-digit scoring slumps, but 20-plus scoring slumps, or one goal in however many games they've played. And then there's goals against, which you look at how well Lankinen played last night, and they still lost the game. They've given up 166 goals.
Yeah.
It's second worst. Only the Ducks have given up more. Goal differential, which is, again, take it for what it is. The Blues have given up 3 more goals than the Canucks, but at -41. Compare that. I know they're miles away from the top of the NHL, but Colorado Avalanche are +79. The Canucks are -41. And as I said, the Blues are -44. But then after that, the next worst is -22. So, they
Yeah.
are far and away in goal differential the worst. So I know you have to fix everything, but which is more fixable for this team? What should fans cling to as a hope that they are starting a rebuild? Is it easier to build up the defensive end of it, or are they closer to being able to be a team that can score freely? I don't know where you start here if you're trying to fix this.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, there's a lot of problems here. I mean, the goaltending is an issue, and the decision made last year to stick with both these goalies, I think, is going to haunt them. Lankinen probably overpaid for Lankinen, good goalie, but was coming off a heater, was already starting to just kind of come back to earth when they gave him his big offer. And we've looked around the league and seen extensions all over the place that have been for comparable goalies who have signed for much less. And really, to me, the egregious one, really more and more, is the Demko one. It's just we forget that last year. I mean, obviously, he was coming off the injury from 2024, right? And which was the third year in a row he'd been hurt. But we forget that last season, not only did he start the season on the injured list and didn't play until December, he had 2 more injuries last season. He is a guy that cannot stay healthy. He's 30 years old now. This season, he's been out. This is the second time he's out. Adam Foote admitting to Drance the other day that he might not be back this season. We might shut him down. Now that might be for purposes of the tank, but fundamentally, if your number one goalie can't stay healthy enough to stay off the injured list, and he visits it multiple times a season, what are we doing here? That is a huge concern. Now, realistically, most NHL teams do recognize now that you need 3 guys, right? And there are teams even that carry 3 guys now. And so that might be the future. And Nikita Tolopilo, I think, will be an NHL goalie, but certainly, the way we saw things go in Montreal, it just got absolutely ventilated, and a lot of it wasn't his fault. Look at the game on Saturday in Toronto, right? The defense core was not good. So to go back to Botch, they need guys. They need an army of guys, right? They need everything. They need more forwards. They do not have there's no center. I mean, Braden Coutts is an interesting center, but he is not an out and out top end centerman. He could be a second line center if all things go well. But they don't have a guy that's the heir apparent to Bo Horvat, right? We've talked about previous. There's no guy that's obviously JT Miller. They've got. They've sort of ended up stuck with a bunch of sort of third line centers. If you consider Hedl when he's healthy, realistically he's a number 3. Rossi I think is a fine number 2, but we've barely seen him, and there's a fair bit of criticism of sort of what he is as a player. He can pass, but what else does he do? Pettersson obviously has been fantastic. But he is a guy that, like I was talking to Rutherford, he might not even be here. So if you trade him, what are you getting back, right? They need to find.
You have to get a bounty.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a Quinn Hughes bounty, but at this point when you that what you're saying plays into something that I did want to get to. We can do it now. If I go back, obviously I'm much older than most people watching this,
Yeah,
much
yeah,
older than you. But you see the programs behind me. Those are actual programs that I got from going to games when I was a kid at the Pacific Coliseum in the Flying V days. They always had one or two players that were offered hope, that were star players, and you would still put Pettersson in the category of being a star. But other than
right.
him, like I don't know what this team is. I haven't. I know it's a very small window since they
Right.
traded Quinn Hughes, but the three new guys, I don't. There's not a guy there that I think, oh, that's a guy that I'm hoping will be like, if not a top NHL star, a very good player. So that promise, I mean, the Canucks were terrible through the 80s and good chunk of the 90s and the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So when they would get those picks, when they would get the Sedins, there was hope, right?
Right.
And I don't see the hope on this team. So when
Well,
you say
yeah.
trading Pettersson, like, is that okay? Fine, you can have a fire sale and get rid of everyone, but then how long are we talking about till this team is competitive? I mean, it goes back to the question I asked you. Do they need more goal scoring? Do they need to shore up the defense? Yes, they need both, but I don't see the pathway for this team unless they hit a home run in the draft.
Well, that's it. And Rutherford, Lacey, he says, I think if we're disciplined and focused, we can turn this team, we can have this team back to where we want it to be, or starting to be where we want it to be in sort of 2 to 3 years, which is ambitious. Realistically,
Yep.
it's, we're talking about 5 years. I think you're just, because, if you're drafting a star, like say you end up in the top three, right? Like you end up with a young center, right? But look how long it's taken, like Macklin Celebrini and Connor Bedard. It's taken them 2 to 3. It's taken them. Well, Celebrini was clearly already good to go even at 18. Last year was great. This year has been fantastic. I mean, like, sorry, year 2 or year 3 of Celebrini? I can't even remember.
Two.
And
You're two.
you get the point, right? Like, he's kind of been great out of the box, but San Jose's still been not very good, right? They're now
But the
trending.
team is getting better. They have
Sorry.
a cornerstone, right? They have a
Yes.
cornerstone.
So it all comes down to how things go in this draft. Like they want to take a big swing in this draft. There's no doubt about that, right? They see, in many ways, it is the sort of the Mike Gillis plan from 2014. Mike Gillis was ready to have 4 first round picks in that draft, and they truly, him and Lawrence Gilman, who's now essentially running or helping run the show in Columbus, they would tell you that they really believed that if they had come out of that draft, the 2014 draft, with those 4 picks, and you're talking about like William Nylander, you're talking about Dylan Larkin, you're talking about Travis Sanheim, you're talking about David Pasternak, right? Like 4 talents that are true stars in this league right now, right? Imagine a team with those guys at the top. And that's kind of what the Canucks are hoping to get. Now, I don't think they're going to end up with 4 first round picks, but they are hoping to come out of a draft crop with that possibility, or with a draft crop out of this draft that has that possibility, that they could truly be a couple of young, really star players ready to go that are in the lineup, leading the way in 2028. And if that happens, great, good for them. But realistically, it's hard to imagine that happening given how little else there is right now, right? Like Toronto ends up with Nylander, but they also end up with Austin Matthews. They had a crop of guys together there. Like Travis Sanheim has been a great player, and Philly was very good after he was drafted, and they're resetting things.
Well, the Canucks had that too, though. To be honest, when Pettersson was starting his real ascent, and then you added Quinn Hughes to the mix,
Right. No,
and then
exactly.
granted they swung for the
Yeah.
fences to bring in Miller, and you had Horvat, you had Besser,
Right. Well, that's
who
it. Exactly.
had been an all star, and now it's just been so deconstructed. I don't see what's left.
No, that's exactly it, and that's what I mean. Is that like the idea that they can get this done right now with a snap of the fingers is very hopeful, right? Like that realistically the 3-4 years, because you get a good couple of good guys this year, you still need a couple more good guys in the 2027 draft, right? So then you're really talking 2 to 3 years after that. So now we're talking about 4 to 5 years from now, right? Like it's not 2 to 3 years from now, it's 2 to 3 years from the 2027 draft, and that's talking about 2029, 2020, 2030. Like it's not around the corner. It's you're gonna have to have some patience here. And the thing is, Rutherford clearly has told his owner that you're gonna take a couple years of tough sledding here, and it is gonna be worth it. It's gonna work itself out, and they don't want it to be 6 to 10 years, right? They don't want it, like the way things have gone in Buffalo, and to a degree in San Jose. they think they can avoid that, but they're going to have to really hit some home runs here.
Well, I mean, Patrick, some of it is clearly luck. I mean, a lottery is involved,
Yes.
but I haven't seen enough of Gavin McKenna to talk with any sort of real superior knowledge on in
Right.
terms of how good a bet he is. But I look at a draft that had just had, Celebrini and Bedard, as you mentioned, a
Right.
little more focus on them because they're from here, but
Yeah.
guys who really behold that number one pick. I think going back to the Kraken's first year, and Shane Wright was like for a year, he was supposed to be the number one guy, can't miss, and it just hasn't
Yeah.
happened for
Yeah.
him. Like, and you hope. I mean, we started the year with McKenna as number one. Now he's dropped to number four in the prospects. I know there's a
Yeah.
lot of time and a lot of water under the bridge before we get to the draft. We're not going to do a mock draft breakdown here,
Right.
but this is, if you don't get a Celebrini or a Bedard type prospect, I look at this team almost like someone who is gambling, and they keep playing, they keep going all in until there's nothing left. And if
Right.
you trade Pettersson, like, I don't know what's left of value here. You talked about Demko, right? There was a point where people were saying, "Oh, you know what? You could Demko in the playoffs, playoff Demko. Someone might give you something for him." I don't think they would. I think you'd struggle for a mid-round pick at this point.
Yeah.
Brock Besser, you just re-signed.
Yeah.
Like, Jake DeBrusk was your big free agent from 2 years ago. Like, these guys are all immovable with their contracts. So
Yeah.
I guess my point on Pedersen is, we're starting to see signs of life is like slowly come back. You've written about this all year. His work ethic hasn't gone away. He's been good defensively. Now, like that goal against Ottawa, that's shades of the old EP, the quick
Yeah.
release, that, like, we've talked about it incessantly, how much more he needs to shoot. So
Yeah.
I would be reluctant to give up with the one guy who has true skill on your team when there's everything, unless, as you say, you get blown away. I'm struggling. I always try and be the
Yeah.
optimist about this team. I'm struggling to be optimistic seeing where they are. And that largely is a little bit how the guys they got for Quinn Hughes have really tailed off after they first got him, after that first little adrenaline jolt of bringing them in. I mean, what's your impression of those guys been?
Well, I mean, your real problem, Paul, is you're media. You're just so negative, right? Like, you just can't see the future of where things are. Listen, you're not wrong. And that was what I said. Like, listen, Drager has the report. I sent it. I sent that to Rutherford. Oh, well, listen, I'm not going to talk about specific team players or offers, but I will talk in general terms, and we talked in general terms. But yeah, like, listen, they're not saying we are trading Elias Pettersson. We're simply saying, if you call and you make us an offer, we'll talk. And we know that they've had calls about him for a while now. And I cited it on the weekend. I mean, I think we know Carolina's been interested in the past. I think Chicago would be interested. I've heard LA might be interested. I mooted the idea of San Jose. I don't know San Jose actually, but San Jose certainly has a stack of young players. That's the kind of team that you would like to talk to. Yeah, like, I think the way he's playing, I think he may not be a 100-point player anymore, but the way he's playing, that two-way element, you mentioned the goal, like, goals, and he is being asked to be the guy, and he's figuring out ways to get it done. He's not always the most conventional player, but he's going to scoring areas. Those goals. Look at that goal last night, or sorry, against Ottawa. And from the slot off a turnover. Look at the goal he scored in Montreal, like bang bang on the doorstep. Like, he's driving the lane, he's picking up chances. He's playing really, really well. He is, never, he's not a guy that's, obviously, I mean, I think at times maybe he's been fazed by listening to what we're saying, what fans are saying, but I don't think that's a problem right now. He is playing the best that he can do, and that's a good thing. And whether that helps the Canucks in the long run, or whether that helps another team, we'll see. But you're right. Like, if you do move him, like, you've got to get something that is very clearly about the next team, right? Like, the
Yeah.
new era. And I think they know that, right? Like, look at the Hughes deal. Like, they held firm, and they had some offers, and they knew they were going to have to move on. And they got a call, and they got the best offer they could have hoped for. And I think it was a good offer. You're right. Those guys have tailed off. Williams got a work to do. Liam Ugrin's like an interesting player, but he's not a dominant player, right? Marco Rossi's hurt. What we saw of him was a mixed bag. So, like, this is a team that has has to be realistic about where it's at. And I think they have to be realistic with fans. And that's why I appreciated Rutherford talking to me, because, the people want to know what the heck's going on. And when you sit back, and I think I've said a couple times, like, this is in the end what a rebuild looks like.
Yeah.
Like, the team's not going to be very good. Now, to make it a true rebuild, you have to start making trades, right? So that's where the other thing, that is where they're at. And we know that the interest is up in Kiefer Sherwood, and I'm sure they'll be interested now that there's like a vocal talk about Elias Pettersson. I'm sure they'll be. Phil Pronik, Phil Pronik is a guy that's going to draw interest. That guy's playing great. Their two best players are playing quite well, and they are going to draw interest. So, no, you're right. Like, there's other guys on this team that are probably not going anywhere. Like, I don't think Brock Besser's going anywhere. Thatcher Demko, it's hard to imagine, right? Those guys are here one way or another. So. Yeah, we'll see how this shakes out, but certainly, the talk is there. Now it's time for the Canucks to walk the walk, and as I said, fans are ready and willing, and I think keen to see the future start to come, and I think they know that it's not going to be easy, and I think that's in the end, that's where the discussion needs to be, but they haven't got there yet because they haven't made any trades, and that's
You
people.
you talk about fans. I wanted to revisit that with you because you're very interactive with the fans, and sometimes we will take social media to more face value than it's worth, like in
Yeah,
terms of actual customers. And I've seen this before, like for the last 6-7 years, people have been screaming for a tank, like go all in on the draft lottery. Um, but then the flip side of that is, yeah, but will you support the team when they're rebuilding? And I think that's where, when you look at the Sharks or even the Blackhawks, to be honest with you, when you've got a Bedard, you've got a Celebrini, and these are first overall picks, right? I'm not that, and years differ between how much impact you get from those players, but that you might buy a ticket to go see Celebrini play.
yeah,
Um, Do you think, with people have hammered this ownership group forever over them not wanting to rebuild because it's a business for them?
yeah.
Um, do you think people have the appetite for 3 years of just absolutely dreadful hockey like we're seeing? Because I look at this now, and I posed this question to you earlier. If you've got a kid and you're taking them to a game, like, what jersey would they want? Where are they going to come home from? Like, oh, I'm so excited to see so and so play tonight. Like, is it Pettersson still? Like, I don't, if you move him, I don't know why people would buy tickets. And I think that's the big question. Absolutely fair game to criticize ownership for how things have gone on here. But I also think it's fair to say, well, you have to have some sort of a decent, entertaining product on the ice, and losing 5-1, losing 5-0 every game just doesn't do it.
Yeah, well, that's it, and you're right. Like, you have to have a reason to go, and I mean, I suppose the flip side of this is what something I noticed or noted earlier in the season, and I think it was when the Habs were here, right? Like, they didn't sell the Habs; they had the Habs and the Oilers, right? And they didn't sell it either game, and we're all kind of like, "Oh my god, they didn't sell it out." And I kind of sat back and I thought about it and said, "Yes," and like, as a bigger picture note, that's a problem, but they still almost did. And so from that standpoint, if ownership is still seeing tickets being sold and people buying, going to suites and all, and buying beer and buying food, like, that's kind of the base task. And so if that's the floor, the question now becomes, can it go any lower? Now, I think the last home game we were at was at the San Jose game. I think the last one I was at, I looked around and there were at least 5 empty suites, right?
Yeah.
So that's the problem. And so again, you could flip that around and say, well, if they're not selling suites anyway, what's the big deal? It's too often the problem in the last decade has been disconnect between reality and language. And so often you think about sort of the sort of self-promoting of the organization of, hey, we got unfinished business or what have you. We're all Canucks, blah blah blah. Unfinished business, by the way. Remember how quickly that got moved on from?
Yeah.
But you look around and you think about, okay, what are we doing here? What are we selling? And I think that's the other thing here is, can the organization, I think, who have to deal with the fans as opposed to hockey ops who just deals with the product on the ice, can they be honest about what all this is and what they're trying to do? And there's some challenges in terms of there's some creative challenges in terms of generating fan interest and connecting with fans that I think they're going to have to think long and hard about. Like, they aren't going to just be able to carry on the way they always have, because fans are smart. There's enough people who are it does help them right now that they remain the only show in town, right? But don't
Yeah.
forget, a year and a half from now, the Whitecaps will be beginning their first ever winter season. And all of a sudden, there will be a team going head to head against them again for the first time since really the Vancouver Grizzlies, which of course was owned by the same organization, so that wasn't a problem. But like the truth is that all of a sudden there is going to be an entertainment option, and the Canucks, if they follow through on what they're saying here, will be deep into their rebuild at that point. And so, the Canucks need to be thinking very long and hard about how they're presenting all this.
Yeah, as much as I'm a soccer fan, Vancouver's a weird town. Vancouver, to me, has always been an event town, right? We had an Indy race. It was one of the big events of the year. The Indy race isn't here. No one follows auto racing anymore. Same
Yeah,
thing with the PGA tournament. We have the rugby sevens. It's like people want to go and do things. They want to be seen. The NHL will always be king here just because it's the top
yeah,
league and everything else. But there is a splintering. You're right. There are people, whether it's financially driven or success, or your kids are more interested in something else. There are the Whitecaps. There's the Golden Eyes, who I think have been a tremendous success. Right, that's capturing a different segment, perhaps.
right.
But everyone I've talked to, and a surprising number of people who've been to a Golden Eyes game, love it. They love the experience. So that is the harsh business reality, but I think the Canucks will always be top dog unless we get an MLB, NBA team back, or God forbid, probably long after I'm dead, an NFL team.
Right.
This is the major league sport here, but I've lived through 8,000 people at the Pacific Coliseum, right?
Yeah.
Where you'd buy blue tickets for $15 and you'd move down to the Reds and the ushers wouldn't even
Yeah.
bat an eye
Yeah.
because there
Yeah.
was no one down there.
Yeah.
So it's sort of been that way. I still come back to the fact, like you talk about how, attendance has been good. Yeah, but those tickets were still bought with Quinn Hughes on the
Yeah.
roster for
Yeah.
the
Very
most
true.
part. And
Yeah.
I look at this team now and I go, well, Wielander could be a useful player. You talk about the three new guys and there's a draft pick. I still struggle to see like who you would want to say, oh, I want to see that player play. And then we're back in the as you cited, the Grizzlies. Oh, I'm going to go see Michael Jordan when he comes to town. I'm going to go see Shaquille O'Neal when he comes to town. You need someone on your team to be a draw, and this is where I struggle a little bit. Obviously, we have to wait and see what happens in the draft, but this team now, to me, just looks so flat. There's no spark. They're terrible defensively. They have guys in, again, 20-game scoring slumps, Patrick.
Yeah. I know.
It's ridiculous. So I guess I'm really sympathizing with Canuck fans if they're this deep in the video as to why you would support this team. I know people will talk about the curse and it's been 50 plus years and there's no cup, but man, you've got to offer hope at some point. As bad as this franchise has been, at some point there were always a couple of players to offer hope, right? And I just don't know that that's there right now. And I guess that's down to Jim Rutherford to fix. And you had a conversation with him, like how aggressive can he be? Is it all picks now? Or do you need some players back? Like, what are you expecting as we approach this Olympic break?
Well, the fact that they're talking about picks is interesting, and that was something he talked about to me even in November. Like at the time, the assumption everyone was operating on is that they want players, and that's it. And in our discussion, he brings up the idea of shortcuts, and I just, this, by the way, is for the young journalists out there. When a person says it or describes a term, you need to go back and get them to clarify it or the term. And so I said, well, when you say shortcuts, what do you mean? And in many ways, he really means short circuit. Like you don't want to jump ahead. And he said, listen, you have to remember where you are. So don't go make a trade just because you're worried that your team's losing. Don't go make a trade that's going to maybe help you get a few wins right now. Right? The reality is that you are not making trades that help your team in this moment. You are making trades that you think will help your team 2 to 3 years down the line. So that means trading for young players and possibly trading for draft picks. So, if you can get a first round pick, like that's why they're, I think, holding firm in the Kiefer Sherwood thing is that I haven't been told this, but others have said this, that, basically the offers have been second round picks and prospects. The Canucks really believe they are going to get a first round pick for this player, and that the longer they wait, the more likely that is, because teams are going to get more and more desperate. So that's sort of the holding pattern they're in. They're asking for a lot, and I think realistically, with the way Pettersson is playing, I do need to temper this a little bit, because of course I look at this and as we speak, he still has only on his 28 points in 38 games. So like there have been nights where he has not produced. Now I think he's played pretty well. Do teams see that? Do they see a player who's worth trading a first round pick for? I mean, if Kiefer Sherwood's worth a first round pick, surely Elias Pettersson is, because he can play in all situations and he's actually
I
been
don't
face offs and so on and so on
I
and so
don't
on.
think you can trade him unless you're getting at least
Yeah,
one first round pick,
but
because for the most part, if it is a Carolina, it's going to be a late first round pick.
yeah. Well, that's it, right? Like or so you mean, yeah, like you have to be also realistic in what you're getting, and I think that's the point. So Sherwood, if you can get a late first and a draft pick, then you're feeling good. Or sorry, a prospect, then you're feeling pretty good. Pedersen is a much more complicated thing, and I think that would probably become a much bigger trade. You're talking about prospects who could be in your raw lineup. Who has a top end prospect? When I first heard Steve Stais went to go watch the Canucks in Montreal, and we started thinking about it, and I sort of hear that they're looking for a right shot defenseman. You're like, okay, well maybe that means they're talking about Philip Hronek, but then you go and look at what Ottawa actually has as sort of trade chips, and they just don't have a lot of prospects. They got Carter Yakimchuk, the defenseman, who's an interesting defenseman, but he's a bit of a boom bust kind of prospect. There's not a lot else there, and so you have to start looking around. Okay, what do other teams actually have? That's why San Jose is interesting to me, because they do have a lot of prospects. LA traditionally has had a lot of prospects. Like, there are teams, Chicago. I mean, we'll see what Chicago does, because they're kind of sort of they're getting there, but how fast are they getting there? What do they have to give? Like, they've obviously made already a bunch of moves. Buffalo, like, where's Buffalo at? What are they looking at? I mean, obviously Pettersson has control of his situation because he's got his no move clause now, right? But it's a challenging moment for this team, and we've covered it off so well. Like how do you handle any of these trade offers? How do you handle any of this sort of vision for the future? You have to be disciplined in the way you think about it and the way you're going forward. So it's an interesting time, but we're still not even in the interesting thing yet, because all we're doing is standing around talking about what might happen. So I am sort of, obviously, just from a discussion point of view and a reporting point of view, keen to get to the next stage, and I'm sure Canucks fans are as well.
Absolutely. So we'll finish up here. I'm not going to do the standard how many games will they win in a week, because that's just too easy. But I was looking at this, right? So they finish up against Columbus, who aren't a great
Right,
team. They just
right,
fired their coach. They've won 2 in a row.
yeah,
If they sweep the road trip and lose that one as well, I mean, on any given night, anyone could beat anyone, clearly. But they have an 8-game homestand and then 2 games, and then it's the Olympic. 2 games on the
right,
road, then it's the Olympics. So when I look at the homestand, like Edmonton, Islanders, Washington,
right.
New Jersey, Pittsburgh, San Jose, Anaheim, who are just real tanking, and the Leafs. If they don't beat Columbus, when do they get their next win?
Oh,
Am I going to be wishing you Happy New Year into
oh my
March
God.
when you come back from the Olympics?
Oh my
Because you are
God.
going to Italy to
Yeah, I know. I
cover
mean, that
lines.
would be. Oh my God. It's.
Can you imagine
Yeah, I mean,
if
let's look at it from
if they
that
go
standpoint.
0 and
That's.
6
I
on the
mean,
road and then 0 and 8 on home, where they've been terrible? Like, let's be honest,
it,
they've been terrible at home.
it's hard to imagine that whole homestand going bad. Like, the Devils are a mess. How about the Devils? They'll beat the bet. They could be the Devils. How about the Penguins? I mean, Sid the kid's going off the Olympics. Archer Seelov's coming back. I think it's the
Yeah, but
Devils.
it's
I
a
mean,
3 o'clock Sunday game. They always, I mean, they're bad at home, but Sunday
fine.
games, especially
Friday night,
afternoon games, are terrible.
fine,
I've
fine.
never
I'm
been to a
calling
good game
January
on a
23rd.
matinee at Rogers.
Yeah, January 23rd against the Devils. How about that? A team that's a
Okay.
mess.
I'm going to say the 31st until against
Oh,
the Leafs.
you're terrible.
I,
What a team.
I'm gonna be wishing you a happy new year until the end of the
I mean,
month.
you don't think the Ducks, like that Ducks game? The wheels have come off the Ducks'
I
bus.
know
They
they have.
score goals,
Yeah.
but they can't do anything
No.
else.
Realistically, I'll change my answer for next week. I'm just being dramatic. So,
All right.
all right. So with that, Patrick, thanks for your time, your insight, your expertise. Can't wait to read your Jim Rutherford column. Everyone else, go to theprovince.com, vancouversun.com. Sign up for Canuck Report. You'll get everything Patrick writes sent to you right away.
Thank you.
So we will see you next week, and Happy New Year.
See ya.